the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of gold and blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tay Von Austin.
The Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
We've no doubt tonight they shouldn't have played the old Golden Boot. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the gold and blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube channel. March 4th edition. That's right, 304 day. Happy 304 day to all of us in the Mountain State. And, of course, we got some more spring practice updates today. West Virginia took to the outdoors. The media even got to see a portion of practice, so we got some nice clips from some of the media members that were there that we'll share here throughout the stream. But really want to talk a bit about Coach Bicknell's press conference. Got some notes from it, and a little bit about Coach Rod's press conference. Again, got some more notes from it as well we'll dive into. And, of course, we will wrap up in plenty of time for you guys to catch the tip of the basketball game coming up here at 9 p.m. And towards the tail end of the stream, we'll take a look at that upcoming contest and preview that basketball game as well. And I'll give you guys kind of my prediction for what I think will happen. So that's kind of what's on the slate for today. Appreciate you guys that are in here live. I know we are streaming not only on YouTube, but of course on Facebook and Twitch as well. Appreciate you tuning in on any of the platforms. If you're on Facebook or Twitch, though, always got to encourage you to come over to the YouTube channel. Give us a subscription here, because that way you can get access to the pre-recorded videos, the podcast episodes, and of course the bonus content that's available to YouTube channel members if you'd like to support us in that way as well. But whether you're watching this live alongside or if you're watching this on a playback after the fact, you can still help us out a ton here on YouTube by hitting that thumbs up button. It really helps this video hit the YouTube algorithm, find more Mountaineer football fans like yourself. And if you're one of those that haven't yet, be sure to subscribe here to the channel to stay up to date on all the happenings around the Mountaineer football program. See some of those channel members there in the chat already. See Shaq in there sharing some of the custom emojis you get access to. Got channel member Shaq. Let's go Mountaineer Shaq. Channel member WVU Wildman 82. What's going on, man? Good to see you as well. And channel member WVU Earl. Always appreciate you also. What's going on, man? Good to see you guys in here. And anyone else that's in here live, you got any questions, comments, throw them in the chat. I'll try and touch up on some of those throughout the stream as well and get to some of your all's questions and comments throughout. But let's lead this off here with a little bit of talk about the press conferences today. Let's start with Coach Bicknell's, because we haven't really had a chance to talk too much about the new West Virginia offensive line coach or get to hear any of his takes yet. So today I was really interested in his press conference. It was almost a half hour. A lot of really good stuff in there. I recommend, after you're done with the stream here, go check it out if you haven't yet. But I jotted down some of my highlights that I liked that he talked about here in the press conference. So I'll run through my notes on his press conference, then we'll talk a little bit about Coach Rod's press conference, and then share some clips that were shared around on social media from today's practice. But let's talk a little bit about offensive line coach Jack Bicknell. One of the first things he said that stuck out to me was that he loves the tempo that Rich Rod uses, which I think that's been an ongoing theme throughout the offseason. Seems like all of these coaches really love the up-tempo offense. I'm sure the players do as well. But he says he loves it because it tires out the defensive line and makes them be more simple because they can't get everything called in. And I think that's really beneficial in today's game, because you've heard Rich Rod talk in the past about how back in the day, defenses would fit the run on the front side, and then on the back side, they would tell those defenders just, kind of chase down the ball. Nowadays, they try and, fit it differently. one side on the front side and then one way on the back side. And if you're going up tempo, it's kind of hard for them to get those calls in to be able to do that. So they kind of have to simplify what they're doing. And that's obviously why an offensive line coach is going to love that, is, of course, keeping them on their heels, and then, of course, wearing them out, getting them tired is a big boost to that as well, which is one reason West Virginia's offensive line need to be in shape, which we'll talk more about that momentarily. But Coach Bicknell also called Rich Rod's system very offensive line friendly, probably partially because of that reason that we just mentioned there as well, but also a lot of different things that you get to do as far as pulling and stuff like that. He says he's been coaching since 1986, and this is the first time he can remember being in an offense with multiple left-handed quarterbacks. So that just goes to show you how rare it is, the fact that West Virginia has not one, not two, but three quarterbacks on the roster that are left-handed, funny enough. And most likely the starter this season, I feel like, will be left-handed, whether that's Nico Marchiol or Jalen Henderson. That's kind of my top two right now, but very interesting, and not a common situation that West Virginia has, having these multiple left-handed quarterbacks. But they also talked about how being in the shotgun, it really doesn't matter too much anymore, because it's not necessarily a blind side where you're in the shotgun all of the time. As far as the offensive line attributes that he looks for, him and Rich look for, number one, first and foremost, goes back to something I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, and that's being in shape. The conditioning is extremely important in this Rich Rod system. So, they're not necessarily looking for the big hog mollies, the guys that are going to get worn down and that are just super huge. They really value agile and athletic offensive linemen that can run and compress the tempo, because they're going to be doing a lot of pulling. And of course, the up-tempo offense, you need to be in shape. That's why conditioning is so critical. Was throughout the winter workouts. It'll be throughout the summer workouts again, just trying to get these guys into shape to where they're able to run a ton and run a lot with the up-tempo offense that West Virginia is going to be using. Coach Bicknell was asked about snapping the ball, what his kind of strategy is there as far as how many guys is he going to have snapping the ball, trying to work on that. So you have, backup plans, emergency plans if you need to plug somebody in at center to be able to snap the ball. And he says ideally he likes to have every single offensive lineman work on snapping the ball, 7, 8, 9 guys, and then kind of narrow that down to your top guys. And was asked, what he likes to have as far as the offensive line is concerned from there. And he said really he feels like if he can get 3 guards, 3 tackles, and 3 centers ready to play, then they'll be in pretty good shape. So that's kind of what he's looking to do. And in order to do that, he likes to cross-train pretty much all positions so that you can have that flexibility among the offensive line, and those guys are versatile. He doesn't want some guy to just be on the left side or on the right side. He wants to be able to play both positions. And he said there may be a case where, your starting left tackle is your backup center or something like that, just to get your best offensive lineman on the field. And then one of his last things that I wrote down here that I really liked that stuck out from his comments was that he thinks that Rich Rodriguez is probably the best that he's been around, or one of the very best in the entire coaching profession, at pushing people and getting the very best out of them that they're capable of doing, which is obviously something positive that you want to hear from other members of the coaching staff. So really loved hearing from Coach Bicknell. I think he's going to be a fan favorite pretty quickly there, coaching West Virginia's offensive line. So those were some of the standout comments that I had there from Coach Bicknell. Let's talk about Rich Rod's press conference now. Rich Rod said, of course, it was the first time the team got a chance to be outside this spring. Been having to practice indoors, a lot of that due to weather, but first time being outside in pads. As we know, this was the second practice in pads, so that was a nice sight to see as well. I believe they were in the stadium. He said they're not slowing down for teaching purposes. He talked about how some coaches believe that, you kind of almost go, half speed or slow things down to be able to teach instead of, and then, speed it up after the fact. He said, no, they want to get them learning at up tempo. So they're not slowing down just to teach it up tempo even now while the guys are learning, and they're just kind of learning on the fly. And that's the way that they like to do things, which makes sense because that's the way that they're going to play is, 100 miles per hour all the time, pedal to the metal. So you may as well try and learn things going at that same rate, because that's what you're going to be used to and what you're going to have to become accustomed to once the season rolls around. Then a little bit of talk about the running backs here. Yet again, mentioned Jaheim and kind of praised him despite the fact that he's still being out right now, kind of nursing that knee injury, getting him back to full health. He said he's not worried about Jaheim at all because of his experience and knows that he's going to run and play the way that they expect the running backs to play, but mentioned that most of the other running backs have to learn to run with more authority. However, he did single out redshirt freshman Dewar Hubbard as being one of the running backs that's on the roster that's actually doing a good job of that. So that's good to hear that Dewar Hubbard seems like he's, really, catching some eyes of Rich Rod and the offense a little bit early on here in his redshirt freshman season, maybe being one of the few running backs that's running with authority. And he went on to kind of describe what he meant there, because he said most of the running backs right now have kind of a tendency to step out of bounds when they're near the sideline, save their body, take one less hit. And he said, unless we're in a 2-minute drill, that's not the way that we do things here. He wants you to lower the shoulder. He wants you to run with authority. He wants you to try and get those extra couple of yards, not bounce out of bounds and avoid being hit, which goes hand in hand with that hard edge mentality they're trying to instill here. So not only is that, something that you preach, but it's something they want them to practice every day on the field. And that's every single play, even in practice right there, going all the way to the whistle and getting every yard you can out of every play and having those running backs run with more authority, which is something that I'm excited to hear and excited to see when it comes around on Saturdays this fall. Asked about the defense, he said the defense is eager, but he didn't mince words. Said they didn't practice very well today, not up to what the expectations are that we're going to have here. And that's another bright spot here from Rich Rod that you've heard in these press conferences throughout the spring, is he's not sugarcoating anything. You ask him something, he's going to tell you something. He's not going to give you coach speak. He's not going to, dance around it and find positive things to say. If he has a negative opinion about something, he's going to let it be known, not only to the players and staff at practice, but to the media in these press conferences as well, which is a very welcomed addition. Also, he mentioned execution being the key, not necessarily the play call and trying to outsmart everyone. Now, is that not the polar opposite of what we just dealt with from the previous coaching staff? Because it felt like, how many times did it feel like we were just making a decision, just trying to outsmart someone, just trying to have, the perfect play call, trying to do something super fancy and end up biting us in the butt, whether it was all the shifts and all the motions, and then we end up getting to delay a game, or we end up getting some kind of pre-snap penalty. And, we talked about in the last stream, even the strategy to try and pin the kickoffs towards the front of the end zone into the corner instead of just telling the guy to boot him out of the end zone. Just little things that we were trying to do to outsmart people. And that's no longer going to be the case. It's going to be all about executing the fundamentals, the offense as it's been taught, and really executing whatever play is called. And he gave an example as, what he means by this, because he referenced the game last season against, I think he said, Middle Tennessee, where Jacksonville State, won that game, and I believe they won that pretty handedly, and said they called the same play 25 times because the players were executing it, the defense couldn't stop it, so they kept going back to the well. And he said if we had another 10 snaps in the game, I'd have probably called it 10 more times, and we'd have called that play 35 times. And that's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep it simple. All those, old adages you want to throw in there. Rich Rod lives by them, and, he will continue to do whatever is working and not try and outsmart anybody, just going to execute the offense the way that it's drawn up. And, it doesn't take rocket science. And Rich Rod's proven that he can get it done year after year doing that strategy. Then he also talked about the wide receiver position yet again, and we've referenced it before. Said he feels like it's one of the thinnest on the roster, not as far as talent-wise. He likes a lot of the talent there. He mentioned, he felt like Cam Vaughn could help. I think he mentioned Jarrell Williams. He mentioned Jaden Bray. But he said that they need some more bodies there. He said they don't really have enough bodies at the receiver position right now to even have, 3 teams of receivers. So I'd say that's definitely a position that you'll look to add some bodies at, post-spring. We already have some coming in that are joining, via the high school route and the transfer route that just haven't came onto campus yet. That'll be here in the fall. So, help is on the way there, but you may see him add another receiver to via the portal as well. We'll see what happens there. And then speaking of receivers, he was asked about one receiver, and that's Rodney Gallagher, and he mentioned some good things about Rodney, but the comment that really stood out to me, and I'm sure probably stood out to you guys if you've seen it, it's been going around on social media, is this one, and I was sure to put this one in quotation marks and have an asterisk beside it because I think it speaks volumes. But you guys let me know what you think, because to me this spoke volumes. He says, if Rodney Gallagher is playing defense, then we did a crappy job filling our defensive back roster. And I don't think that you have to read between the lines too much to see what that says about filling out the defensive back roster for last year's team, right? So, that comment definitely stood out to me in a major way. He said at the wide receiver position, they have 2 slot receiver positions that they'll utilize and 2 outside receiver positions that they'll utilize. And some guys, they try and pigeonhole themselves into being an inside receiver or an outside receiver. And ideally, he would like to have guys that can play all 4 of those positions, the 2 slot positions and the 2 outside positions. Then they're going to have a better chance of getting on the field if they're able to do that. So it sounds like there will be some cross training, not only on the offensive line, as Coach Bicknell referenced, but at the receiver position as well, guys with the ability to play both inside and outside at either of the slot positions or either of the outside positions. Yet again, kind of lamented, post-spring where they're going to have to trim this roster down, and said, it's not going to be fun having to make those cuts because they're going to have to cut guys that they would really love to keep. But West Virginia's already over the roster limit, and we have other players that are already signed coming in over the summer. Plus, we have guys that we're going to want to add and go after and target in the portal. So there are going to have to be some tough decisions made following spring football practice in terms of cuts. He said he thinks the defensive back coach that was his defensive back coach when he was at WVU, Bill Connolly, is the second meanest coach in the history of football besides himself. That one made me laugh just because he referenced himself as being the meanest coach in the history of football when he said that, so I had to jot that one down. And then he was asked a little bit about the tight ends, which I was glad to hear asked about because we haven't really heard too much talk about the tight ends yet. We've added several of those, but he said, tight ends, they haven't really gone live with them yet, but he's anxious to see how that works, especially to see how they block because we're going to utilize a lot of 2 tight end sets. And he said at times we'll have 3 tight ends on the field at once, maybe even 4 tight ends on the field at one time. So he wants to have at least 4 tight ends ready to go and ready to play this upcoming season. So that's a position to keep an eye on there. And then the last comment I have here was just one that made me laugh because he was asked kind of about the quarterback competition and maybe a timeline of when he's deciding who's going to be the starter. And his he asked, he said, what's our first game? And they said, August 31st. He said, do we have a time for that yet? And they said, not yet. He said, well, let's say if the game's at 1 p.m., we'll decide the starting quarterback about 12:59 p.m. on August 31st. So that one made me laugh. Just, obviously he's kind of being a little bit facetious there, but he's going to play it close to the vest. Somebody asked a question about the practice today because we said the media was allowed in there for I think about 10 or 15 minutes, and somebody asked a question, why was the offensive line lined up a weird way or whatever, and he said, hey man, I'm not giving y'all shit. He said, I don't want to give away anything. So that just shows how much he's keeping it close to the vest. And despite talking about the quarterback competition there and when he's going to decide, he did reiterate yet again, which I think this is the 3rd or maybe even the 4th time that he's talked about really liking the guys in that quarterback room and feels really good about them. So those are kind of some of the notes I had from the press conferences there today. And I think we had some good stuff there, both from Coach Bicknell and from Coach Rod himself. So take a swig of my drink here, and then I'm going to catch up on some of y'all's comments. Then let's share some clips from today's practice and some pictures that have been going around from the different media members that were in attendance before we switch gears and talk a little bit about basketball here towards the tail end of the stream. And as y'all can see, it's still the Dr. Pepper Blackberry Zeros. Still loving those things for sure. Hey, good point there, WVU Wildman 82. Baseball still kicking butt, 12-0. Shout out to the West Virginia baseball team for sure. I think I saw, did I pull that up or not? Thought I did. I might not have. I saw they hopped into the rankings. Let me see if I can pull that up really quick. Trying to share some insights about WVU baseball, although you guys know I don't follow baseball myself or don't really know much about the game, but I am supporting the Mountaineers, have been for the past couple of years, and Steve Saban's first year is off to a great start at 12-0, and looks like they've hopped into the rankings. I guess there's 3 different rankings for baseball. They're 16th in one, 22 in one, and 24 in the other. Thanks for bringing that up there, WVU Wildman 82. Wanted to share that as well. Shaq says, what I love about this channel besides the sweet emojis, you don't have to be a channel member or pay to have your chats read when you comment, and that's what made me join. I appreciate that, Shaq. Yeah, I try to get to as many of the comments as I can each stream within reason, especially if you are a channel member. I do try and highlight yours as well, but I appreciate that, man. Appreciate the love that you're showing there, and yeah, the sweet emojis, as Shaq mentioned, you get those if you become a channel member here, which we always appreciate. That support helps keep this mic recording and that camera rolling. And then, of course, you get all kinds of bonus content. The monthly Hangouts for Almost Heaven members, which we'll have one coming this weekend. I think we're going to try and do that Saturday, just as a heads up on that. Pre-recorded videos. You get to access to those, get to watch us record those, so you get to see the video unedited. You get to see it before anyone else. And then, of course, in season, you're going to get the player grades. You're going to get the snap counts, depth chart updates, film reviews, and all that good stuff as well. But always appreciate the channel members there, and that's what made Shaq donate there, as he said there. And I really appreciate the kind words, man. And W Wildman 82 agrees and appreciate you guys a lot there. And hey, could have said it better myself, Shaq. Smash the like button, share, and subscribe. Yeah, all those things really help the channel a ton. I know it's crazy just to scroll up there and hit that little thumbs up button, but you don't know how much that helps out just doing that one little thing, which is fast, easy, and free, and it helps us out a ton here on the YouTube channel. So with that being said, appreciate you guys. You guys got any other questions, comments, throw them in the chat there. Try and touch up on those again momentarily, but let's get to some of the clips and pictures that came out from today's practice. Some good ones here. So we have this one here, shared by Joe Picado. Photo credit to Taryn Malone. We get Blaine Stewart and Ryan Nealon. And, you know, this just kind of speaks to this staff and how not only do we have a lot of new, fresh faces that are really up-and-comers in the profession, and a lot of guys that are really experienced in the profession, a mixture of both of those things. But we also have a nice influx of guys that have history here at WVU. Obviously, Rich Rod himself and Rhett Rodriguez, but we also have the son of the late, great Bill Stewart, Blaine Stewart, and the son of Don Nealon, Ryan Nealon, and get both those guys side by side in a picture there. And going right along with that, we also have another former West Virginia great back on the sidelines as well. And of course, that is Jeff Castile. And of course, you never know which direction I could have went there with that, because we have multiple former West Virginia greats on the sideline. But yet again, from Joe Picado and Taryn Malone, a picture of Jeff Castile, who's now on staff as the Bandit coach. So not only do we have, you know, the Stewart legacy, the Nealon legacy, the Rodriguez legacy, but also the Castile legacy, as Jeff Castile and Jake Castile both on this staff as well. There's a picture of Jeff Castile now back at WVU. And then I thought that do I have another picture here, or the rest of these clips, I think. Let me see. The rest of these, I believe, are clips, so let's go ahead and go through some of these. Reddit CFB sharing some short clips from WVU's practice here on social media. Let's check out some of these. So Nico with a complete pass there, looked like. And then they put a couple more up on this one here. Little look of the run game. I'll let that one run back through one more time. Jalen Henderson there, handing the ball off as the back goes into the end zone. Looks like Dewar Hubbard, I believe, there, getting that handoff. And that's a little bit of what they were talking about with the offensive line. See how the offensive line's lined up way back here? And Rich Rod mentioned that's just because, you know, he doesn't want the guys just kind of standing up right there at the front and just kind of hugging on each other. He wants these guys attacking and kind of meeting with force, and that's why they kind of do that and drill some. Let's see if we got another clip here from the Reddit CFB page as well. There's like Jalen Henderson here at quarterback again. And another handoff there to the running back up the middle. I believe that was Dewar Hubbard as well, if I'm not mistaken. So we have those clips from Reddit CFB. We have this one here, which you guys, I'm sure, will like, from Joe Picado of Pat White greeting players as they come off the field. And I like what Pat's instilling here as well.
There we go. Get you back, man. Way work. You shake a hand. Get better. I can't trust you. Yes, sir. You look better. Keep trying.
Good stuff right there. And if you guys couldn't pick up on it, Pat White was telling him, you know, look a man in the eye when you shake his hand. He said, I can't trust you if you don't look me in the eye when you shake my hand. And that's, you know, good lesson, not just for football, but for life right there, for sure. Love that stuff that's being instilled there. And you got to love seeing Pat White right there on the sidelines and dapping up Jalen Henderson. That's pretty cool to see. You know, one of the GOATs dapping up possibly the incumbent. We'll see what happens there. But you got to just love seeing Pat White back on the sidelines, if nothing else. Then yet again, this one also from Joe Picado. Here's a nice pass here you're going to see from Nico Marchiol to Rodney Gallagher from today's practice session, as it looks like Rodney got loose for a touchdown reception today. Nice little touchdown pass there from Nico to Rodney. And then the last clip I have here is from Metro News Sports. They just got a nice little, it's about 60-second or so clip here, sights and sounds from today's practice. So enjoy this one for about 60 seconds, and then I'll be right back, guys. So there's some nice sights and sounds there. Shout out to Metro News for sharing that one on social media. And then the last thing I had from the football side of things was I just wanted to share, been trying to share the Weight Room Warriors and Student Athletes of the Week as they've been shared by the university. And this week's Student Athletes of the Week, Ethan Head, the incoming kicker, Xavier Bosley, the offensive lineman, and defensive lineman Wilnerson Telemock, named the Student Athletes of the Week this week for WVU. So that's pretty much all I had for the football side of the news. I'll talk a little bit basketball here before we move on. Got some questions that rolled in here. One coming from Jeff Burton. Appreciate you tuning in and chiming in, Jeff. Who's going to be the quarterback this year, he asked. Great question. And I think if you're asking Rich Rod, he's going to let you know about 60 seconds before the start of the first game on August 31st. But it's going to be a nice competition up until that point. I'm personally leaning in the Jalen Henderson camp right now, subject to change. Let's not rule out Max Brown, maybe not even rule out Khalil Wilkins yet, but I think personally we're looking at it being Jalen Henderson or Nico Marchiol myself. That's kind of where I stand. We'll see what happens, though. Hey, what's going on, Silas? Good to see you in here, bro. Appreciate you, man. Let's go Mountaineers. Let's see. Spring is still wild with Rich Rod, Pat White, and Noah Devine all home, Silas. 100%. Couldn't agree more, man. Just so many legendary faces back at WVU. It's got such a sense of nostalgia, and it's very surreal, I think is one of the best ways to describe it for sure. Have a good evening, Wildman82. Appreciate you hopping in here live while you had a chance to. Hey, what's going on, JR? Good to see you in here, bro. He said he's Team Nico. Hey, I think a lot of people are, man. A lot of people are riding with Nico, feel like he's going to be the guy. I think he's got a great chance. I've been, impressed with him. Obviously, being undefeated as a starter is important, and I think he has a lot of similarities to Tyler Huff, the starter at Jack State last year, so you never know which way it could shake. I just really like Jalen Henderson's game personally. Hey, I appreciate that, JR. You have to call me out like that. But, yeah, my birthday is on Friday. I ain't applying for the Social Security quite yet, but, getting up there in age, I guess. I'd like to say I'm still in my 20s. That's what I'd like to joke and tell people. Sometimes they believe it. Sometimes they don't. That'd be nice if I was, though. WFan23 said, I think Rich Rod said he will play or rotate 3 quarterbacks. He did say that a couple press conferences ago. I think we covered that one, but he did mention it yet again today. He said he feels like he has, a couple of guys that could be game ready, and I think, we've seen that in the past, at multiple places he's been, but even the last time he was here back in 2005, playing both Bednarik and Pat White to start that year, and also with the style of offense that he plays, he has to have multiple guys ready to go because the quarterback's going to run a good bit in this offense for sure. JR said, hey, pushing 50, not quite. closer to 50 than 0, though. Who's taking Wyatt's spot? Good question. Which is interesting, right? Because we're going to have left-handed quarterbacks this year, so I know they were talking about not really having a blind side with being in the shotgun, but if you're considering something your blind side, it's going to be kind of the right side versus the left side this year. But I think that my prediction is, in my depth chart that I had it for the spring, I had, which I can pull that back up real quick to showcase the spring depth chart, I guess. But I think it's going to change for the fall. Now, if we're talking in the fall, I think at left tackle, we could probably see Will Reed, and at right tackle, Xavier Bosley. But for the spring, what I'm looking at is this here is kind of the way I'm projecting it, which, interestingly enough, when the reports came out today about some of the lineups from some of the media members that were there, some of this that I guessed actually is pretty accurate, especially along the offensive line. I was pretty spot on with it, which that's last year. Oh, let me go back. Wrong year. My bad. 2025, not 2024. All right, here we go. But this is kind of the way I see it for the spring. And from what I saw, this is kind of the way that it lined up, with the exception being Xavier Bosley being out. Him and Jaheim not practicing today, but I think he'll be there first string when it comes back. So I think you're looking at Tykeist Crawford, Xavier Bosley, and Will Reed when he gets on campus kind of competing to be your main tackles, with the exception being unless they make another move in the transfer portal after spring. But that's kind of the way that I see it currently, with the way I'm looking at it this spring anyway. Good transition, Jeff. That's what we're talking. I'm going to swing up and talk a little bit about the basketball game next, do a little bit of preview and give my prediction for that. Eric says he likes watching Rich Rod's presser, as do I, man. They're super entertaining, and it just doesn't feel like coach speak at all, man. He's really letting you know how it is and letting you know what he didn't like, what he thought performed badly, and what they're going to continue to improve, what positions they're going to continue to target. And I've really been pleasantly pleased with his press conferences thus far, and today was no different. Really enjoyed that one as well. So it's kind of some thoughts on the football side. Let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit of basketball. And before we talk about men's basketball, we do got to talk some WVU women's basketball, as they've had a heck of a year. They've secured the double bye in the tournament. And, I put out the question on social media, is JJ Quinterly the greatest women's basketball player ever at WVU? She's certainly very much in that conversation. She was named a unanimous first-team all-conference selection today, and also was named Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12 Conference there for the women. So you got to shout out the women's team. Finished the regular season undefeated at home. Got a high seed there in the Big 12 tournament, and they could have a very successful postseason. And JJ Quinterly, one of the best players not only in the conference but in the country for women's basketball, and glad to see her honored with the Defensive Player of the Year award. And then as far as the basketball side of things is concerned, I think one of the best WVU basketball shows to follow is Unreasonable Doubt. He has a great podcast covering WVU basketball. You guys should check out if you don't already, and follow him on social media at I'm Josh Witt. But I thought this was very interesting that he put out in regards to tonight's game, which we're going to transition into talking a little bit about now. Utah and WVU coming up at 9 p.m. tonight. Utah 13-0 this season when they hold their opponents under 70 points, and they're 3-13 this season when their opponents score 70 plus. WVU on the road this season has only broken 70 twice, and one of those came in overtime. So going to have to play a little bit better and score better on the road than they have throughout most of this season if those two numbers are going to hold true here for this game. But it's going to be interesting because who would have thought West Virginia's interim coach from last season, they'd be having to face this season as Josh Eilert has taken over as the interim coach at Utah. Just a funny situation there. It's super ironic, but as far as the matchup, Utah currently favored by 4.5 points. So West Virginia going into this one as an underdog, and they could really use a win here. If they could win this one in their home finale in their final regular season game, then they would probably could consider themselves a lock for the NCAA tournament. But it's not going to be an easy task. They did beat Utah at Morgantown, but going on the road is different, and Utah has played much better at home than on the road this year. Both teams coming into the game, West Virginia 17-12, 8-10 in conference. Utah also 8-10 in conference, but they are 16-13 overall, and they are likely to miss the NCAA tournament, while it looks like West Virginia could and should be dancing if they can handle business here towards the end of the season. As far as some of the numbers, ESPN FBI gives it a 56% chance for a Utah victory and a 44% chance for the Mountaineers. You look at the team stats here, points per game, right around 76 for Utah, 68 for the Mountaineers, who have been more of a defensive team this season. I think that scoring will change when they have, a roster that more fits what Darren DeVries wants to do and what they can do on offense. But their defense has been very good, only giving up 65 points per game, whereas Utah's given up 71. Field goals pretty similar, 43 for the Mountaineers, 46% for the Utes. Rebounds, West Virginia averaging 33, Utah averaging 39. So West Virginia's going to have to hit the glass hard this evening. Assists, 14 per game for West Virginia, 18 per game for Utah. Seems like they move the ball pretty well there. 4 blocks per game for both teams, essentially. West Virginia with a slight advantage in the steals, averaging nearly 8 per game, and Utah at around 6. Utah is coming off a win. West Virginia is coming off a loss. Look at the recent results for both teams. Utah just defeated Arizona State. After that, they lost to Arizona and UCF. And then they beat Kansas State and Kansas, which are 2 impressive wins that they were able to pull off back there in early February. Of course, we know West Virginia just lost to BYU after beating TCU. Not had the best stretch lately, have the Mountaineers, only winning 2 out of their last 5. Those victories coming over Cincinnati and TCU with losses to Baylor, Texas Tech, and BYU. So really could use a win in what seems to be a pretty important game tonight against the Utah Utes. So let's take a look at the leaders for Utah, and then I will take a look at the leaders for the Mountaineers and give you guys my prediction for the game tonight. As far as Utah is concerned, let's take a look at some of their stats here. Madsen, they do have the Madsen twin brothers. The guard, Madsen there, he averages 15.2 points per game. Osser, the other scorer in them for double figures at 12.4. They do have Lovering at 7'1", so there is a lot of height on this Utah team for West Virginia to have to face and deal with. Lovering being one of those. He leads the team in blocks, nearly 1 per game. Dawes was the one that really kind of sparked Utah. In the previous game, when it looked like West Virginia was absolutely going to dominate, Dawes kind of came in and made it a game. He was really playing some good basketball himself, so that's another guy to watch that can be a bit of a spark plug for the Utes. Little leads them in assists, just over 3.3 per game. As far as some of their shooters to watch out for, both the Madsen brothers shoot the 3 ball pretty well. Mentioned Dawes and his scoring ability, nearly 8 points per game there as well. You see a slew of guys getting it done there for the Utes as we take a look at their stats. Now, let's go to the Mountaineers here, who, of course, we're going to go as Javon Small goes, as kind of has been the case for most of the season, but we really could use some secondary and maybe even some tertiary guys to step up in this game for the Mountaineers. We saw last game, everyone kind of have an off night, so you got to think it's kind of going to be, the odds are in your favor to have a bounce-back performance for Javon Small and hopefully for some of these other players on the roster as well. But as you look at it, Javon Small leads the Mountaineers in scoring, over 18 points per game, assists, nearly 6 per game, and steals were nearly 2 steals per game. Amani Hansberger, the rebounding leader, with over 6 per game, and Ed Andre, nearly a block and a half per game there, too, if you want to round up, as I tend to do here. So 18 points per game for Small. He's the only West Virginia player that averages double figures. You could maybe count Hansberry. He's right at 10 points per game. Of course, Tucker DeVries, we're still missing after he's out for the rest of the season. Been a different team without Tucker for sure, and it really would have changed the season a lot if you have him for the entire year. But some guys that we could really afford to step up tonight, really all 3 of these guys right here, we could use some scoring from tonight. Toby Oconee, who had a rough game shooting-wise last game. Jonathan Powell and Joe Yesfu, who has been our main scorer off the bench. Both Oconee and Powell averaging 8 points per game. Yesfu just over 6, but he's played better, in kind of the back half of the season than he did early on, as he's had to be counted upon more, and he's really kind of been the bench scoring for West Virginia here in the back half of this season. He's shooting 33% from 3. Jonathan Powell shooting 34% from 3. And then you have Javon Small at 36% from the three-point line as well. We're going to need to have some guys hit the glass. Hansberry's been the one to get it done recently. He's really come into his own at, kind of dominating the boards despite having the lack of height, he's a real battler down there in the paint. And I love when Hansberry gets going and has those double-double type games. But it could be a big game for Buck Harris as well, not only as he makes things go for us defensively, but it seems like he's kind of a spark plug for the whole team. If he's attacking the basket, scoring on offense, getting loose balls, grabbing rebounds, it really gets this team going. And you could say the same thing for Ed Andre as well. Both of those guys are kind of your spark plug guys, maybe glue guys if you want to call them that. Could use big games from both those guys on the defensive end and hustling around. West Virginia's going to need the big man to step up and hit the glass in this game against Utah. I do feel like. So it's kind of the matchup and kind of look at the leaders for both teams. As far as my thoughts on the game, I think going on the road, it's never easy to win the Big 12, but it's also never easy to tell how having an interim coach is going to affect a team. Sometimes they can rally around that guy and it really give them a spark and they play some of their better basketball of the season, or it can go the other way and they kind of, fold in on themselves and collapse and don't have a good performance. I think that we'll get a Utah team that, wants to win this game, wants to end their season strong, playing at home. And obviously, I think Josh Eilert may have a little bit extra motivation for this game as well. He'd probably love to beat WVU. So I think we're going to get a Utah team that's ready to play. We just have to, match that energy. And one thing that I think we really need to do in this game that's hurt us in recent games is we need to have better ends to the half, whether that be the first half or the end of the game. It seems like we'll play good for 18 minutes and then 2 minutes of end of each half kind of fall apart there, and we need to have that strong closes. I know in football we call it the middle 8. I guess maybe we call it the middle 4 minutes in basketball in between those two halves or whatever. West Virginia needs to play well there and needs to play well for a full 40 minutes, I think, in this contest. But if West Virginia is able to hit the glass, not get dominated in the paint, not give up a ton of offensive rebounds to these Utah big men, I like our chances because I like Buck Harris's defensive ability to probably stick on Madsen if necessary. And, defense has kind of been our calling card this year. I think we'll be able to hold Utah, around that 70-point range. And if West Virginia, I think, can get over it, as we saw in the tweet there from Josh Witt, I like our chances in this game. And I think after following a game in which we had a really off night shooting the basketball, I think we're going to see a bounce-back performance from West Virginia tonight. I think not only is Javon Small going to get his, but I think we're going to have our secondary and tertiary scorers hitting some shots. We're going to need a couple threes from Hansberry, a couple threes from Jonathan Powell. Going to need some inside scoring as well. Maybe Oconee gets to the rim, Buck Harris gets to the rim. But all in all, I think at the end of the night, we're going to end up happy as Mountaineer fans, and we're going to get a win on 304 a day. I'm going to call it a 74-71 West Virginia victory by 3 points on the road. Get this all-important road win, then come back home versus UCF in a few days, try and end the season on a 2-game winning streak. And then I think you'll feel pretty safe and won't have to sweat it out and try and win a game in the Big 12 tournament. You'd probably be a lock for the NCAAs at that point. So maybe I'm just trying to speak it into existence. Maybe I'm throwing the gold and blue glasses on, but I'm going to pick a West Virginia victory tonight, 74-71 over Utah. So there's my thoughts on that one. And the last thing I want to pull up here and just address really quickly, because I know you guys are probably wondering why I haven't talked about it on the channel yet, and that's a couple of pieces of coaching news. And the main reason I haven't really talked about them yet, I'm planning to do a live stream once the official announcements are out, because then I will know more about each of these. But I'm sure all of you guys have seen that Neil Brown is going to be taking a job with the Texas Longhorns, and that West Virginia has found their running backs coach as well. I'm just waiting on an official announcement from the university. As I stated in this tweet here, once WVU makes it official, I will be doing another live stream or a pre-recorded video to talk about Larry Porter extensively. But just some early notes on him. Coach Joseph Adai at LSU, who was a first-round pick, just finished coaching Amarion Hampton at UNC, who's likely to be a first or second-round pick in this year's draft. He was named College Football Recruiter of the Year more than once. So not only a great running backs coach that's had a lot of success with players at the position, but a great recruiter as well. And, for example, of a couple of players he recruited both Justin Jefferson and Russell Shepard to LSU. Both were 5-star players there that got to go to LSU. So just some brief thoughts there on Larry Porter, but I know some people are wondering why I hadn't addressed that yet. I'm wanting it to be official, so then we have more information on it, talk about that a good bit, and then we will do that in a future live stream. So that's something to look forward to probably later this week. I was hoping the official announcement would come out today. Hasn't quite yet come out from the university, but I expect it any day now. So it could be tomorrow, could be Thursday, but I'm sure we'll have another live stream coming to discuss that. And of course, once Texas makes the Neil Brown news official as well, which is all but official already, we'll have that to talk about as well. So probably on the next live stream, we'll get a chance to recap this basketball game against Utah, and we'll have a couple pieces of coaching news to talk about with those being made official in the near future. But that's all I had for this one. I'm going to catch up on some of your all's comments, and then we will wrap up shop and have plenty of time for you guys, do whatever you got to do, have you about over an hour or at least an hour before the basketball team tips off, and be able to cook you some food, get you some drinks, whatever you're going to do before West Virginia takes on Utah. And we watch that at 9 p.m. on ESPN Plus tonight. I'm going to take a swig of my drink, and then I'll catch up on some comments, and we'll wrap this one up, guys. Appreciate all you guys that tuned into this one live. But if you're watching on playback, that's really awesome too. I'm always appreciative of you tuning in either way, or even if you're on Facebook or Twitch, appreciate you watching there also. But if you are, be sure you hop over to the YouTube channel where you can watch the pre-recorded videos as well, and get all the extra content, the podcast episodes, all of that good stuff. But whether you watch this live or in a playback on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Helps a ton. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, to stay up to date on the WVU football news as it occurs throughout the offseason, and of course going into the 2025 season. And if you want to help out a little bit extra, you can become a channel member. There's a join button near the video description. There should be a link in the video description, or you can go to the YouTube channel homepage and find the join button there, and that helps keep this mic recording and that camera rolling. And can never thank you guys enough for that. If you didn't get a chance to chat here live, you can throw your thoughts in the comments. I'll respond there in text form, and I always appreciate those interactions as well. But let's get to some of these live chat comments here. Eric says that he feels like Rich Rod's pressers are sort of Huggins-esque, says he's a character. Today he basically said, I'm not showing you guys shit. Yeah, I mentioned that a lot. I think you hopped in late, Eric, but that was one of the last notes I had from Rich Rod's press conference, was when they asked about the offensive line. Why were they lined up like they say, hey, I'm not giving you guys shit. When the media's in here, we're not giving nothing away. And you got to love that. And, also just got to love his brutal honesty. It's some good stuff there as well. See a couple people saying Meg Bulger, maybe the GOAT. She's certainly, one you got to throw into the conversation as well. That's definitely one that's up for debate. And depending on how J.J. Quinterly closes her career, I guess would consider where you stand on that debate. But I definitely think she's at least in the conversation. And Meg Bulger, I know, is a lot of the people's GOATs for women basketball, and rightfully so. She may still be mine at this point, but I'm a big fan of J.J. Quinterly as well. Yeah, I was surprised that they didn't put her back in the game, kind of let her check out earlier so she didn't break the Coliseum record, because she tied Meg Bulger's record of 38 points. It's like, man, you could have let her get 2 more points, break the record, and hit 40. But hey, at least, if those are the two GOATs, they share the record, which is pretty cool. But, they may still have a chance to play some more games in the Coliseum if they're able to get, I think it's the top 16 seeds in the women's tournament. The way they do the women's tournament is a little bit different than the men's. Instead of teams traveling, to certain regions, the top 16 seeds play their games at home for the first round or two, I think, in the women's NCAA tournament. So how awesome would that be to have NCAA tournament games in the Coliseum? That would be pretty cool. Small, definitely the best player. I may be doing a little bit of wishful thinking, thinking we put up 74 on the road, JR, for sure. But I just feel like, the odds are in our favor to have a good scoring night after, seems like more often than not recently, we've been missing some open shots. We've been getting good shots, just haven't hit them. So at some point that's got to fall the other way, and we're going to knock down some of those jumpers, because despite the fact that, Javon Small being the go-to guy and the main scorer on the team, we do have some guys that can hit shots, be it Jonathan Powell, Joe Yesufu, Imani Hansberry. They're guys that can knock those down, and we're going to need them to do it tonight if we're going to hit that 74 that I predicted on the road. Hey, I've never been one to say that I'm not one that'll throw on the gold and blue glasses, and I definitely threw them on there for that one, thinking we're going to hit 74 on the road. But hey, hopefully I'm right. Hopefully I'm right, and they surprise us for sure. I would love to see Small go bonkers, man. Drop about 30-some tonight. That'd be nice. Hey, what's going on, channel member Trey Edwards? Appreciate you hopping in, man. Doing good. Hope you are as well. Hey, no worries, man. No worries. Appreciate you hopping in, even if it is late. You can always rewind and watch from the beginning, and the playback will be up at any time. But hate that y'all lost, man, but glad to see your team made it to the semifinals there, man. Nice little run you guys had, especially I think you said you were, the 8 or 9 seed? So a heck of a run there to make it to the semifinals with that type of seed, Trey. Always appreciate you there as a channel member. Yeah. That's right, Jeff. That's the main thing. If we can knock down shots, we could do it. I think our defense is going to be there. It just depends on if we're going to be able to score the basketball at the clip that we need to pull it off tonight. But I got my fingers crossed, and I got a good feeling about it. Hopefully you all do as well. But I will wrap this one up and let you guys get ready to watch that around 9 p.m. And hopefully we're taking in a Mountaineer victory. But either way, we're going to be rooting those guys on the road at Utah, taking on Josh Eilert. Funny enough, who would have thunk it at this time last year that we'd be facing him, as an interim coach yet again, and he would be at Utah. Just a really ironic situation there, but it's going to be just added another element to the game tonight to make it even more entertaining to watch. But that's pretty much all I got, guys. Just kind of a recap of what we went over. Talked about Jack Bicknell's press conference, some of his notes. Went over Rich Rod's press conference, took some notes from it and shared those, and then shared some nice clips and photos from practice today that were shared by members of the media that were there. So you guys that hopped in late, be sure to rewind and go back and catch the beginning of this stream before we switched gears and talked about WVU basketball. Had some nice stuff to talk about there on the football side, and we'll have plenty more to talk about. If I'm not live again tomorrow, I will be live again on Thursday. So over one of the next couple of days, I will be back to chat with you guys live again, and looking forward to that. Always enjoy catching up with you guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of the night, and hopefully we get a good performance from the Mountaineer basketball team. We'll recap that game on the next live stream as well. But having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.